In Tennessee, it's the first day of the Kept Alive to Torture murder trial. Defendant Sean Finnegan faces multiple charges, including first-degree murder, after police found the dismembered body of Jennifer Paxton in his home back in 2020.
Investigators say that Finnegan and his girlfriend, Rebecca Dishman, lured Paxton into their home with the promise of a place to stay. She was homeless, the victim. And Dishman pled guilty last year, and today she took the stand. We're going to have her shocking testimony in just a few minutes. First, though, here's a look at more in the background of this bizarre case.
August 5th, 2020, police in Oak Ridge, Tennessee investigate a tip that Sean Finnegan and his girlfriend Rebecca Dishman have a human body stored in their freezer. Local station WATE spoke with one of the neighbors about the day of the police search.
You could see flashing and stuff through the windows, a lot coming through.
Inside the home, investigators would find the frozen, decomposing remains of Jennifer Paxton, hidden under a bed. Finnegan had allegedly cleaned out the freezer in an attempt to cover up his crime. His neighbor described Finnegan's arrest.
When they brought him out, he had no expression. He was just there. There was no anger, no sad, no happiness. He was just there and stare, and it was really creepy.
Jennifer Paxton was 36 years old and reportedly homeless when Finnegan and Dishman lured her to their home by offering her a place to stay somewhere between November 1st and December 31st, 2019. According to court documents, Paxton died of strangulation, but there was evidence that she had been beaten with a baseball bat, repeatedly raped, shackled with a dog collar, and denied food and medical treatment before she was killed. One of Sean Finnegan's neighbors told WATE about how he was scared of Finnegan.
He's just, those eyes, I mean, just like a wild animal. And he cursed me, and I said, I don't want anything to do with that guy. And I was afraid of him from then on.
Prosecutors charged Sean Finnegan and Rebecca Dishman with multiple counts, including first-degree murder, kidnapping, and abuse of a corpse, and filed a notice of intent to seek the death penalty. Last September, Rebecca Dishman agreed to a plea deal and was sentenced to life in prison. She's expected to testify against Sean Finnegan.
All right, and that day came today. Rebecca Dishman took the stand for the state. So let's go into the courtroom to watch some of her, what I have to call, shocking testimony.
You sit down here, if you'll say your first and last name and spell them both. And it's really important that you speak loudly into that microphone there so everybody can hear you. Can you do that for me?
Rebecca Dishman.
Okay, probably needs to be a little bit louder than that. Okay, so go tell me your first name and last name and spell them both.
Rebecca Dishman, REBECCADISHMEN.
Very good. And like I said, if you can keep speaking up, that will help. Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you. Rebecca, are you a little nervous today?
Yes.
Are you excited to testify?
Yes, I've waited for this moment for 4 years.
But still feeling a little nervous, a little adrenaline?
Yes.
I talked to you before. If you need me to repeat a question, if you need anyone to repeat a question, don't hesitate to ask, okay? Can you tell us when you were born?
April 30th, 1998.
So how old are you today?
I'm 26.
Can you tell me about where you grew up?
I grew up in Maryville, Tennessee.
Who did you live with growing up?
I grew up with my parents.
And are they still with us?
No, they passed away when I was 18.
Do you remember what year that was?
2016.
So is that also about the year you finished high school?
I was a senior. I was in the process of graduating.
So who did you live with when your parents passed?
I lived with my fiance at the time.
How long did you stay there?
A couple years.
Did you ever get married to him?
No.
So what happened that you no longer lived there after 2 years?
My aunt and uncle, Bobby Brown and Carol Brown, took me in.
And when was that?
I don't recall.
Okay. But do you recall how long you lived there with, you said Bobby Brown and Carol Brown?
Maybe a year, not for sure.
So you stayed with them for about a year. Did you leave voluntarily?
They kind of just washed their hands of me. They got tired of me.
Do you know why that was?
Because I was with another fiance and had decided to move in with him, and they weren't happy.
How many fiancés have you had?
I've been engaged 5 times, but I've lived with the 3 of them.
Okay. So when you left Bobby and Carol Brown, you said you went and moved with another fiance, and they washed their hands of you.
Yes.
How long did you stay there?
I believe it was a year or so.
And how did that turn out? Did you marry that person?
No.
Did you stay living with them?
No, they moved.
Okay. So where did you go from there?
I ended up staying with my best friend, Tabitha Sparks, and she ended up kicking me out as well.
So where to from there?
I moved back in with Crystal Mays, which is the mother of Austin, my first fiance.
All right, we need to squeeze in a break, and I just have to say, you know, she's so soft-spoken, but I know, you know, we are about to get into some disturbing details of what she says the defendant did to her.
Yeah, and let's remember, the battle lines have been drawn because the defense has said that it was her who sort of spurred this whole thing, right? And of course, she is going to testify now about some stuff that really, it's graphic. So if this stuff bothers you, you might want to head to another channel. Well, no, keep it here.
Keep it here at Court TV. It is something you really can't turn away from. But coming up, then we will head back into that Tennessee courtroom. Stay tuned.
Was a reporter brutally murdered for digging too deep?
Once all the evidence comes out, it'll be clear as day.
Will Robert Tellez go from elected official to convicted killer?
The investigative reporter murder trial. Live coverage today on Court TV.
Tonight on Closing Arguments, a Tennessee man faces a potential death sentence in a twisted murder case. We'll bring you today's key moments as this high-stakes trial gets underway.
Closing Arguments, tonight at 8/7 Central, only on Court TV.
We are watching crucial testimony in the kept alive to torture murder trial. Sean Finnegan is charged with first-degree murder after police found the dismembered body of Jennifer Paxton in his home back in 2020.
Finnegan and his then-girlfriend, Rebecca Dishman, allegedly kidnapped, tortured, and murdered Paxton. Now, Dishman pleaded guilty, and she's, in return for testifying, was able to escape the death penalty. Now, the defendant in this case is facing the death penalty. Let's go back into court now for more of her testimony.
Yes, until they kicked me back out.
Okay. So what was the next place?
Rick and Jenny Fry. I've known them since I was...
Could you say that again and speak up? I think the court reporter was having trouble hearing you.
Rick and Jenny Fry.
One more time.
Sorry. Rick and Jenny Fry.
Okay, thank you. And did you stay there for a significant amount of time?
Yes.
When did you leave that location?
I believe it was August, September of 2019.
And what happened that made you leave there?
I had met Sean on Facebook and decided to move in with him 2 weeks after meeting him. He convinced me.
What was that last part?
He convinced me to move in with him.
Okay. So you say you met him on Facebook and moved in with him about 2 weeks later. Am I hearing that correctly? Again, sorry,
Yes.
it is. Make sure you speak into the mic. Could you tell us about that interaction, about meeting him on Facebook and what happened in that 2-week period?
Our relationship was kind of fast, and within the 2 weeks I decided to move in because the people that I was staying with, I felt like I was scared that they would end up kicking me out, and I was hoping that things would work out better.
So how did you feel about trying to move in with Sean?
At the beginning, I felt, comfort and safe.
Okay. Now, you said that he had convinced you to move in. Could you tell us about that, please?
Like, the first text that I recall is he was telling me that he wanted me to move in with him, that he wanted me to live with him and be his girl.
And did you like that idea?
Yes.
So after about 2 weeks, how did you get to his place to move in?
I had basically told Rick and Jenny that I was leaving. I packed my stuff, and he came to get me, and I moved in with him.
So what were things like when you moved in?
The first couple weeks were okay, and I went to go take a shower, and that was our first argument. He pushed me, and I ended up cutting my leg pretty bad, and that led to my first punishment.
Okay. Now, when you met him on Facebook, and of course when he came, was it he who came and picked you up?
Yes.
Okay. Did you know how old he was?
No.
Did you ever have a conversation about how old he was?
He had told me that he was in his 40s at the time.
Okay. Did you know anything about his background or what he did for a living?
Not really. I just knew that he worked at the bar.
Okay. Did you know what bar it was he worked at?
The Pint House in Knoxville.
Okay. And when did he usually work?
Like mornings, I think. Like anywhere from 5 to 5 the next day.
So when you say mornings, like he would come home in the morning?
Mm-hmm.
So 5 to 5 the next day would be like 5 p.m.
to 5 a.m.
5 a.m. Okay. Now, who else lived at that house with you?
His mother at the time.
Did you notice anything about her physical condition or shape?
He had told me that she was on hospice and her health was bad.
Okay. Is that something that, having seen her, sounded accurate to you?
She had her good and bad days.
Okay. So when he was at work, who was there at the house when he had those overnights?
Myself and Francis.
Okay. Could you sort of describe what the house, or this apartment, it was a quadplex, right? It kind of looks like a house, but there are multiple units. Is that right? Like multiple, you have neighbors who have one unit, you have a unit.
Yes.
Like an apartment. Can you describe just, what the house looks like, the apartment you're in looks like?
There was 2 levels and a laundry room, and the apartments were separated by a driveway.
Okay. So what was in the downstairs level?
The kitchen, living room area, and upstairs was the bedroom area and bathroom area.
Okay, so did his mom have a bedroom there that was hers?
Yes.
And where did you stay?
I stayed with Sean in his bedroom.
In his bedroom. Okay, so there's 2 bedrooms.
Yes.
Bathroom also upstairs?
Just upstairs.
Okay. What was your relationship like with his mother?
I mean, we had our ups and downs. She had her good days and bad days. I didn't really have a good or bad relationship, somewhat neutral with her.
So during the day, you weren't hanging out with Miss Francis, is that her name?
Yes.
Did you ever talk to any neighbors?
Yes, Mahogany Peak.
Okay. And where did Mahogany live in relation to where you stayed there with Mr. Finnegan?
She lived across from us in the other apartment complex.
So if you go out your front door, they live in front of you, or if you go out your back door, they live behind you?
The front door.
Okay. So what were you doing at the time? You said he was working at the Pine House. What did you do?
I stayed at home and I was a stay-at-home girlfriend.
Okay. Had you worked anywhere before you moved in with him?
Yes, but I lost my jobs.
Could you repeat that, please?
I lost my jobs.
Was that you lost your job?
Yes.
Okay. Where had you been working?
I worked for 2 years as a CNA at Kindred in Maryville. Five Guys, I was a cashier, and then at Huddle House, I was a waitress.
And you were let go from each of those jobs?
Yes, all of them.
Okay. So if I could draw your attention back to something you said a little while
ago. All right,
ago.
let's bring back in our guest, still with us, trial attorney and law professor Joe Richardson. And Joe, you know, this case at the end of the day is about power and control. Who had it? Who was the driving force behind this? And I tell you what, just listening to a little bit of her testimony saddens me deeply. Yeah. And if it's an act, it's a very good one.
Yeah, it is. I mean, and they're basically showing how he really pulled all the screws here and hit all the switches. His house, his transportation, she's in a jam, she's got nowhere to live, she's lost all of her jobs. He's the one with all the control. There's no way that they're going to get to a place where this woman ends up getting killed and they would actually believe a defense theory that she was actually the crazy one that wanted all of these things done, by the way, in the house that he lived in, which was his, with his mother. Yeah. So it's going to be very, very hard to put the blame on her, as it were, as if she was the one that had them going in all of these directions.
She even described that mother as she had good days and bad days. I don't know that we're going to learn more about that, but don't you wonder what mom may have done, not done, been involved in? She's not criminally charged, but you just wonder what's going on inside of that house. All right, so let me switch gears and ask this, and that is, I love talking about the demeanor of the defendant because the jury is watching the defendant. Did you notice, Joe, the way in which he was watching the witness testify? So many times when you have a co-defendant, they won't look at him or they're angry at him for getting up there and testifying. What do you make of his demeanor?
Still trying to control her, you know, and might be narcissistic and in denial that he's sitting watching her testify against him. It's like, you know, he might not really believe it, and then she is very demure, you know, very soft, etc. And just like you say, Michael, if it's an act, it's a darn good one. She deserves an Academy Award because she looks like the weak one. She looks like the one that was easily influenced either by her personality and or by her situation, her circumstance, her desperation, etc. But yeah, it is interesting. He's still looking at her like, hey, are you actually really going to say this stuff?
Yeah, and I looked at, we were talking, it maybe as even if he's enjoying the fact that she's going through this, it was going through my mind as well. Quickly, I only have a few seconds left, Joe. If in fact, by some miracle, folks believe maybe she was the driving force behind some of the torture, etc., would that really make a difference in this case, based on what you said earlier, the fact it's his house, he let her in, etc., etc.?
I don't know that would make much of a difference at all here. He would be super lucky to get anything less than the death penalty, but he's going to get convicted.
All right. Thank you so much, Joe Richardson, for joining us today.
All right, folks, stick around because coming up, more of Rebecca Dishman's testimony in the Kept Alive to Torture murder trial. Keep it here on Court TV. Welcome back to Court TV Live. I'm Michael Ayala.
And I'm Ashley Wilcott. We begin this hour with the Kept Alive to Torture murder trial in Tennessee. 56-year-old Sean Finnegan is on trial for first-degree murder and the death of 36-year-old Jennifer Paxton back in 2019.
Now, investigators say that Finnegan and his then-girlfriend, Rebecca Dishman, lured Paxton to his home with the promise of giving her a place to stay. She was homeless at the time. And then they beat her with a bat, raped her, tortured her, and then strangled her to death.
Now, Dishman later took a plea deal in order to avoid a possible death sentence. As a result, she was given life in prison without parole, and she agreed to testify against Finnegan.
And Dishman was among the first witnesses called to the stand today. I want to get you folks back inside the courtroom for more of her direct examination.
The first time that you got in a fight with him, or yes. I think you said he shoved you.
Yes.
Could you give us some more detail about when that was, what happened?
I had asked to borrow his phone to be on Facebook, and one of my exes texted, and it led to him getting angry and shoving me in the shower.
I'm gonna check. Can we approach?
All right, they're at a sidebar. So, Michael, you mentioned this last hour, and I just have to bring it back up. She is so sympathetic looking at her.
Yeah, and you know, we just talked about the age difference. 56, so I guess he was 51 at the time. She was just like 18, 19. All right, let's get back into court.
That particular event.
About?
We were talking about that event where it's kind of hard to hear you. I think you said you had messaged someone on Facebook, or they had messaged you.
Yes. My ex had messaged me and was texting explicit messages, and it led to him getting angry with me and shoving me in the shower, which I cut my leg and fell.
Is that the only time something like that happened?
No.
Tell us about the next time you recall.
Later, when I got out of the shower, he told me that, you know, he wasn't happy with me, and there was consequences to that. Like, I had to have sex with him, and he tied my hands to the bed and scratched me down my back and made me bleed.
Now, how would you consider the dynamic of your relationship? Who was in charge?
Sean.
And you had said you did something that made him unhappy.
Yes.
And that there were consequences. He told you there were consequences. Was that a normal part of your relationship with Sean Finnegan?
I didn't know that it would come to that extent. Like, I knew it would be kinky sex, but I didn't think it would be violent as it was.
Okay, so to rephrase that, you knew there was going to be kinky sex.
Yes.
And you were consenting to that.
Yes.
You were okay with that.
Yes.
You were engaged with him and an active participant in that. Is that correct? And so you said you didn't expect it to get as violent as it did.
Right.
What do you mean by that?
He was a lot more aggressive than I thought he was gonna be. I wasn't expecting it to be as harsh as it was. The punishments and just the dynamic and power role, I guess you could say.
Okay, when you say you didn't expect it to be, you know, as harsh or as aggressive, what kind of things would he do then as punishment?
Anywhere from putting me in a dog cage and urinating on me and climaxing, defecating on me, chaining me up with a dog chain, using box cutters on me, sodomizing me, using torch ladders on me, just very violent punishments.
And I understand this is probably hard to talk about, but when you say using these things on you, what do you mean he was using them for? What was he doing?
For his sexual gratification.
Okay. So you say he used chains on you.
Yes.
How specifically were they used on you?
It was wrapped around my neck with a padlock, and he made me walk on all fours and act like a dog.
Okay. And the same thing, he put you in the dog cage?
Yes.
Okay. You said he used a box cutter?
Yes.
How did he use that?
On my inner thighs and cut.
All right. So he would use a box cutter and cut on your inner thighs. And you also said something about a torch?
Yes.
What kind of torch?
No. Can't do that in here. Can't do that in here. Sorry. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor. What kind of torch?
A torch lighter.
Like a torch lighter?
Mm-hmm.
Could you describe what that looks like? How is that different than like a cigarette lighter?
It's usually used for like lighting grills and other things like that.
And what would he do with that?
He made me perform oral sex on him, and he had his leg over my throat and was burning my shoulder at the time.
Okay. What was your name for him? If you referred to him as Sean, and did you refer to him as anything else?
At the time, I was his little girl, and I called him Daddy.
Okay. Did you love him?
Yes.
Do you still love him?
Yes.
Were these punishments he did and the things you described as harsh or aggressive, did those continue for your whole relationship?
Yes, and they continue to get worse.
If I could draw your attention back to like the winter, like around December of 2019, do you recall anyone else coming in to the home?
Yes, Jennifer.
Could you tell us about what happened when Jennifer came in?
She came in and I was putting the bed up, and I was confused because I didn't know the woman, and Sean later came in and introduced us together. She made breakfast and asked to take a shower, and once she went to go take a shower, Sean asked me, "Do you want to kidnap her?" And
how did you react to that?
I knew that I had no say-so really in the matter, that he controlled the house, and anything I said, even if it was a no, that it wouldn't have mattered anyways.
Do you know how Miss Paxton got to the house?
No. I'm assuming that he just,
Yep. Don't assume. Did she arrive the same time Sean arrived?
Yes.
Okay. And this was a time he had gone to work and he came home?
Yes.
Okay. So she's there, makes breakfast, takes a shower, and he's talking to you while she's in the shower. Is that right? Or was it before or after she got out of the shower that he made that statement about kidnapping her?
When she was in the shower.
Okay, so what happened when she got out of the shower?
She ate breakfast and we were talking, and after she ate breakfast, he walked her over towards the back door and was showing her a baseball bat. And then he started hitting her over the head. And I went into shock, and he yelled at me to go upstairs because his mother was coming down for her medication.
So when this started, where were you when he's talking to her about the baseball bat?
I was in front of the fireplace in the middle of the living room.
Okay. And so you said they're closest to the back door?
Yes.
And Miss Finnegan is getting her medicine?
Yes.
Where was she?
She was upstairs, but she was in the process of coming down.
Okay. So at that point, he instructs you to intercept?
Yes.
So what do you do then?
I went upstairs and I told her to stay in the room because I didn't want her to see what was going on.
And did she do that? Do what you asked her to do at that point?
She fussed at me and went back to bed.
And what did you do?
By the time I got downstairs, they were fighting. Jennifer had the fire grate over her to protect her, and there was blood on the floor.
When you say the fire grate, you said you were saying about fireplace earlier. There's the thing in front of the fire place, or like the thing that logs would be in?
The thing that is in front of the fire.
Like the screen?
Yes.
Okay. So you say she's got that defending herself with it. Is she hitting him with it, or is she holding it over her?
She was just defending herself with it, holding it to her body and head.
Was that effective defense?
No.
So what happened is when you arrived and you see that going on, what's going on next?
I was in shock and I approached slowly, and he told me to go into the kitchen and get the cleaning supplies.
And what did you do when you got the cleaning supplies?
He told me to clean up the blood, and he was disgrading her. He ripped her pants down and was screaming at her and said...
I need you to speak up some more, a little louder, okay? A little closer to the microphone.
He said, "Why don't you shave?" And she started crying, and he just spat on her and was really aggressive towards her.
So she's there on the ground, it sounds like at this point?
Yes.
And he's ripping that off. And you have cleaning supplies.
Yes.
What's going on at that point?
I was in shock, and he told me to clean up the blood around her, and I did so. And at one point, he told me to get on one side, and he got on the other, and both of us went up the stairs with her and walked her to his bedroom.
So are you each propping her up at this point, or are you just like walking her and escorting her?
Escorting her.
Okay. So she's conscious
Yes.
at this point still. So you walk up the stairs. What happens when you get up there?
He locks the door and lays her on the floor on my side of the bed, and he makes her perform oral sex on her. And I'm forced to watch.
Okay, could you repeat that? I think the court reporter was having a hard time hearing you.
As we mentioned, really hard testimony to listen to. The things that first he was doing to her, the girlfriend, and then that the girlfriend says he was doing to the victim, Paxton.
Yeah, and just the fact, what makes you really sad is she's willing to put up with this.
Yeah.
Because of her situation.
Yeah.
At least that's the sense you
There's
get.
a home for her. All right, we do need to take a break. When we come back, Rebecca Dishman testifies about what happened when the defendant left her at the house with the victim. You don't want to miss it. Stay here on Court TV.
Tonight on Closing Arguments, a Tennessee man faces a potential death sentence in a twisted murder case. We'll bring you today's key moments as this high-stakes trial gets underway.
Closing Arguments, tonight at 8/7 Central, only on Court TV. Join Court TV's Vinnie Politan with the latest and breaking true crime stories.
Now, let's look at the other side of all of that.
Vinnie Politan Investigates. Tonight, 9/8 Central, only on Court TV.
We will get you back to the kept alive to torture murder trial in Tennessee in just a moment. But first, let's bring in trial and civil attorney and law professor Dante Mills. Dante, Michael and I were talking about she's very sympathetic, believable, but there's one thing that bothers me a little bit was she was saying, for instance, the defendant was hitting her with the bat, not her, but the victim, Paxton, with a bat. And then she went up to take care of mom. She comes back down, and the victim is holding a fire grate thing that goes in front of the fireplace to protect herself. She is bleeding. She's conscious. Some of these details, devils in the details, may start to sound like it's not really plausible.
So this is a very, very interesting case because one is very gruesome. And the fact that this happened, it should never happen. No one should ever be treated like this. She wasn't treated as a person, the victim, and that's very unfortunate and disturbing. But when you look at this case and break down the two potential assailants, one, the girlfriend who's been convicted of murder, but she agreed to cooperate so she wouldn't get the death penalty. What you have to decide is, how much was she involved in this as a willing participant, or how much did she feel like she was forced to do it? And just like you described, when she came down that steps, she said, well, then we both grabbed her arms and walked her up the stairs. At no point in the description so far have you heard anything about her trying to make this stop. Now, she mentioned that she felt like she didn't have a say, but she did say she was asked if she wanted to kidnap her. So I think that's really what the jury is going to have to decide. If this was a one-man band show, if they did it in concert, I think that may go towards the death penalty and how active a role she played in it. Obviously, the defense is saying, well, listen, I had her there. She was at the house, the victim, but I didn't kill her. The girlfriend did. So the jury is really going to have to determine how much of this may be an act to try and push it on him. She said she still loves him, but is this an act to push it on him? Or was she really a non-willing participant in this situation? And I don't think it's going to be easy for the jury to decide, because there's moments, and she's about to testify about moments where she was there with the victim by herself. And you start to question, like, well, why didn't you help her escape at that point? There's a lot of questions that come into your mind as to if this pair really did it together, or if he was the one truly behind all of this, everything behind it.
Yeah, I agree with you, Dante, but I think you're leaving out one option. There's also an option that she was the driving force. The fact that maybe, she was one that didn't like this girl coming into their space, that she was the one that was unhappy and had been hurt, so was very happy to hurt someone else. So all those things, that's an option as well. All right, let's get back into court now for more of the ex-girlfriend of the defendant in the kept alive to torture murder trial. She's still testifying about what happened to the victim, what she saw, and her role in it. So let's get back inside that court.
He forced her to perform oral sex on him, and I was forced to watch.
And so forgive me for being very overt with this, but you say he forced her to perform oral sex. Could you tell us where his penis is?
He put his penis in her mouth and ripped her clothes.
And she's in the floor next to the bed?
Yes.
Where are you?
I was crouched beside him.
Okay. And how long did that continue?
Until he got angry and pulled my shirt down and made me finish.
And what do you mean by he made you finish?
He wasn't satisfied with her, and he made me perform oral on him.
So is that in the same way that you just described that he had Miss Paxton perform oral on him? And so he pulled your shirt down and had you do that?
Yes.
And you said he finished?
Yes.
And what happened at the conclusion?
He went downstairs to clean up the blood and told me to watch her to make sure she didn't leave the room.
Did he make any other statements
No.
about that point before going down? Okay. So he went down to clean up the blood better.
Yes.
And then comes upstairs. You're in the room with her. What's going on while he's downstairs?
I'm thinking that he was cleaning up the blood.
Are you on the bed? Are you next to the bed?
I was standing next to the bed.
So about how long was he down there, if you recall?
No more than 5 minutes.
And what happens when he comes back up?
He grabs her and chains her to the side of his bed and tells me he has to leave for work and kisses me goodbye and leaves me there with her and tells me not to leave the house, to keep her there if anything happens, to take care of it, like keep her from yelling to hurt her.
Had she yelled out?
No.
Did she have any sort of vocal reaction in that first impact with the bat, or when she has the fire screen?
Yes, she was screaming.
Okay. So he leaves for work. She's chained to the bed. Where are the keys to the chain?
He took them to work with him.
And so he's at work all day and you're there.
Yes.
And she's still where?
Chained to the side of the bed.
Did you have any conversations with her in this period of time?
Yes, as I was feeding her and giving her drinks and letting her smoke, we talked a little bit.
Did you try to let her go?
At one point.
Tell us about that.
I took a knife, like a kitchen knife, and tried to pop the locks, and I cut the zip ties off, and it led to Sean getting angry with me.
Okay, so he's at work and you do this.
Yes.
When he comes home from work, where is everybody? Describe that scene for us.
Frances stayed in her room while all this was going on.
Okay. So he comes back. Are you in the living room or are you in the bedroom with her when he gets home from work?
I believe I was in the bedroom at the time.
Okay. So he walks in and he sees this scene.
Yes.
Tell us about that reaction.
He was angry. Zip ties, she could have grabbed anything and stabbed you or hurt you. She could have got free.
Was that all that happened? Is that he yelled at you about it?
Yes.
And what did he do about her being chained there?
He told me not to do it again, and he put the zip ties back on her.
Was there any punishment for you at that point for undoing any of the fastenings or chains?
I believe he made me perform oral sex.
Okay. Were there anything else that he did sexually at any point to Miss Paxton?
He forced my adult toys inside of her and forced his fingers on her and forced me to watch. And also, at one point, she was on the floor and he was behind me and he forced me to climax over her.
All right, we do need to take a quick break. When we come back, Dishman continues to testify in graphic detail about what she says she and the defendant did to the victim. Keep it here on Court TV, your front row seat to justice.
I'm Matt Johnson in Las Vegas, Nevada, covering the investigative reporter murder trial. This is Court TV, your front row seat to justice.
Welcome back to Court TV Live. I'm Ashley Wilcott. Thanks for joining us. Sorry.
And I'm Michael Ayala. Testimony got underway today in Tennessee in the kept alive to torture murder trial of Sean Finnegan. He's accused of luring 36-year-old Jennifer Paxton to his home to beat, rape, and kill her.
His then-girlfriend, Rebecca Dishman, was also charged in the case, but she took a plea deal so that she could avoid the possible death sentence. In result of that plea deal, she received life without parole, and she had to agree to testify against Finnegan.
And on the stand today, her testimony has been nothing short of shocking, graphic, and downright disturbing, so we apologize for that. She's still on direct examination, so let's get you back into court.
In the course of this, you are actively participating in sexual activity with Miss Paxton, too. Is that correct?
I couldn't climax until he forced me to climax.
But that does mean
Yes.
that you are participating. And when you say he forced you to climax, what do you mean by that?
He physically, aggressively rubbed me until I climaxed.
Okay, so he is touching you while you're over her.
Yes.
If we have the picture of that. And what did he do at your climax?
She was revolted by it, and she said I was gonna throw up, and he slapped her across the face, and I just shut down and left.
When you say you left, where did you go?
I went downstairs.
Okay. And when you say that he used adult toys and forced them inside her, again, we do have to be specific here. We can't assume what you mean by that. Where did he force those toys?
He used a vibrator on her vaginally.
Okay. Anywhere else?
Not that I remember.
So you go downstairs. Does he follow you? What happens after that?
I just cooled off for a minute, and then I came back upstairs.
Okay. And when you come back upstairs, where are Sean Finnegan and Jennifer Paxton?
We went to sleep.
Okay. And when we're talking about you going to sleep, where is she?
In the floor, beside Sean.
Chained to the bed?
Yes.
And where are you?
On the left side of Sean.
Okay. And he is in the bed?
Yes.
Yeah. That's basically what I'm asking. Are the two of you are in the bed and she is in the floor, if I'm understanding what you said correctly? Did you ever have a key to those padlocks?
No.
So during the day, since you don't have a key, what do you do about Miss Paxton if she has to relieve herself or go to the bathroom?
There was a cigarette pill outside that I used for her to use the bathroom in. And she had to wear adult briefs.
Okay. So when you talk about a cigarette pill, could you sort of tell us how big or small that was?
Big enough to hold maybe a gallon.
Well, if you could, was this like a big bucket, or was this flower pot size? If you could compare it to something.
Yeah, like a flower pot.
Okay. Did Miss Paxton ask to leave?
Yes.
What could you do about that?
I told her that I wish I could let her leave, but I I didn't have any way of letting her go, and it really upset me.
Did she ever tell Mr. Finnegan she needed to leave or wanted to leave?
Yes.
What was his reaction?
He told her that as he was killing her, that she wasn't going anywhere, that she was going to die.
So when you say he said he told her, you're going to die?
Yes.
What did she do?
She started crying.
And what did he do?
He just kicked her and spat on her and was really aggressive.
Did he any time follow through on telling her she had to die?
He did this as he was strangling her.
Okay. So if you could tell us about that specifically. She's been in the house. He has gone to work. He's come back from work. What happened in, let's say, the last portion of her life? Could you walk us through what was going on?
Yes. One day he came home from work and he had bags that had shower curtains, washcloths, bleach, gloves, and things of that nature. And I thought it was for, the house, but he was carrying it upstairs, and once he carried it upstairs, I knew that he was gonna kill her. He had me go with him and shower her in the shower, and as he was strangling her, I was cleaning up the blood that was left over in the shower. And at one point he screamed at me to get in the bedroom, that I was taking too long. And I came in and he told me to lock the door. And as I walked in, he was straddled over her, strangling her with a shoestring, and told me to help him. And I just shut down and sat on the bed and just gave up, essentially.
How long did this go on?
For hours.
Could you describe for us specifically what was going on in the course, if you say this was hours?
He would start and stop, take breaks in between, and he wouldn't allow me to leave the room to empty the ashtray or anything, and I just sat on the bed.
So was he smoking?
Yes.
In between while this is going on? Were you?
If you believe Rebecca Dishman, he did all of it. He killed her, he strangled her with a shoelace. He went and bought everything so he could clean up after he killed her. Talk about premeditated murder.
Yeah, no doubt about it, but I'm still struggling with the fact that he had gone to work for whole days and she did nothing to try to save the girl or save herself. So that creates some thoughts in my head.
Yeah, especially because she told the girl, I wish I could help you get away, but I can't.
But she could have.
Yeah, it's a crazy case. All right, we do need to step away. The witness testifies about the victim's last breaths and what they did to her after she died. Stay here with us on Court TV.
It's really important for Scripps News reporters to live where they are reporting.
You get to talk to people from all different backgrounds.
We do stories with people regardless of the political persuasions.
We're coming here as people, as your neighbors.
We know best what's happening in our communities.
And that's why I wake up every morning, is I hope I can deliver folks information so they can make an educated decision.
I'm Forrest Saunders, Ben Brown,
Jake Burns,
Rachel Louise Just,
Alex Miller, Scripps News.
Watch Scripps News, find with an antenna, or on your favorite streaming app.
All right, folks, we'll get you back to court in just a minute. But first, let's bring back our guest for this hour, attorney and law professor Dante Mills. And Dante, she's doing a great job of coming across as a bit of a victim, But here's my question for you. She was charged just like he was, very same way. They gave her the deal. I don't know exactly why or how that came about, if they think she's maybe on some level less culpable, but they certainly charged her the same. Would they have charged her the same if they truly believed that she was a victim in this case, the way she's describing it?
That's a great question, Michael, and we're always on the same page. I was going through the same thought process as I'm listening to her testify. To answer your question directly, they would have charged her the same generally, because you don't know when the charging happens. Most times, especially in state court, we're not talking about the feds or somebody that does their investigation first and then brings charges. Most times in state court, they charge and then investigate. So if the body was found in the freezer and they knew that both people were active there, I'm not surprised that they charged them the same. However, when I'm listening to her testimony, I don't think she's doing a good job. She's a necessary witness for the prosecution, and that's why they gave her a deal, because you want to assure yourself that you can get 2 convictions. So if you can get one person to take a guilty plea and testify to help the other person be found guilty, that's very appealing to a prosecutor. So I understand why they offered her the deal, but she's going, I think, a little too far to make it seem as if she wasn't involved at all. And she already pled guilty, so she doesn't have to do that. There's no other penalty that she can face. But it sounds like she's trying to remove herself from the situation as much as possible, and I think that's messing up her credibility, and it may impact the jury as they're evaluating her testimony.
She's making a lot of generalities in terms of, oh, he was very aggressive. Well, I'd want to know more. We've talked about, as a defense attorney, do you go after more or not? Just quickly, tell me, Dante, do you go after it to find out more, to drill into that, or do you need to leave that alone?
I leave it alone, and I just highlight and nitpick the points, like, for example, where she was asked specifically, were you involved sexually with Jennifer? And she said her answer was, well, he told me when I can climax. She didn't mention anything about being involved. She kind of skipped over that part, and I would focus specifically on those and nitpick and not ask for more details, because she may flush out the story and make it sound more plausible. So I would leave it where it is, but just nitpick those points when I'm speaking to the jury in summations.
Yep, I think that's what you said too,
yes,
Michael. You're like, nope, a lot of that you leave alone.
We
you
are always
revisit.
on the same page.
Yes, those defense attorneys. All right, let's get you back to court for more of Rebecca Dishman's testimony. Now she's talking about how the victim was killed and then what happened to her after her death.
Was she allowed to smoke in the course of this?
No.
Okay. So you try to take ashtray out. No, you've got to stay in here.
Yes.
He's choking over shoestrings, stops, cigarette break.
Yes.
However long this goes on, what finally concluded this episode?
He went to empty the ashtray, and she was taking her last breath, and I got on my hands and knees and told her goodbye because I knew she was dying. And he came back inside and slapped me across the face and left for work because they were blowing his phone up because he was really late for work.
So when she finally passed, and you said you knew she was going to, was Mr. Finnegan choking her at that point, or?
He was in the bathroom emptying the ashtray.
After he had choked her?
Yes.
And so they're blowing up his phone for work?
Yes.
What happens with her body laying there on the ground?
She takes her last breath and she just dies.
Okay. So she died, and he says, I'm going to go to work?
Yes.
Is that what you're saying? So what happens? He goes to work, and you're there?
Yes. From the time he left to the time he came home, I was on his side of the bed, checking her pulse and just in a state of shock and fear.
Did she have a pulse?
No.
Did you call 911?
No.
Did you have a phone?
No.
At that point? So he comes home from work after he's worked his whole shift,
yes,
presumably. So what happens when he arrives home that night or early the next morning?
Me and him clean up any blood and anything that's left over, and we brought her downstairs, and he put her in the freezer downstairs and blocked it from people getting in. Like, the door was faced towards the stairwell.
So is this the freezer that you had there in the kitchen?
No, this was a different freezer.
So this was a different freezer?
Yes.
When did that freezer show up at the house?
I don't know exact dates, but it was there before Jennifer died.
Long time before or short time before?
Shortly.
Okay. So it's there in the living room. You put her in.
Yes.
And he positions it so that the door is facing the wall.
Yes.
How long was it in that position?
I'm not for sure.
But did that change at some point?
Yes.
Could you tell us about that, please?
At one point, he was scared of someone going in the freezer, and we took her body out and carried the freezer upstairs, and then carried her body upstairs and put her in the closet.
So how did this freezer get power in the closet? Is there an outlet in there?
He ran an extension cord to an outlet.
Okay. So at this point, she's in the freezer. What is the state of her body? Is she wearing her clothes?
No.
What happened to her clothes?
I believe that they were in a bag, like, for tossing away.
Charged with kidnapping and murder in the death of Jennifer Paxton. His then girlfriend, Rebecca Dishman, was also charged, but she pleaded guilty and was sentenced to life in prison in exchange for testifying against Finnegan. Well, the state is seeking the death penalty against Finnegan, and prosecutors say Paxton was homeless and she was lured to the couple's home in December of 2019 with a promise of a place to stay. Well, the couple then held Paxton against her will, raping, torturing, and eventually killing the 36-year-old woman. Finnegan's attorney, on the other hand, placed the blame on the defendant's ex-girlfriend, Rebecca Dishman, claiming that she's providing testimony about what took place at Finnegan's home in really gory detail. Well, let's get back into court now, where Dishman is testifying about what happened to the victim.
The process in the freezer the first time.
When the freezer was in front of her, and he forced her. She made a noise, and blood went on me.
So was she complete?
Yes.
At that point? Of anything around her to the body? Okay. So she's in that same sort of wrapped up state. These are up to the bedroom closet.
Yes.
Is there anything else about him doing anything to the closet door? Did the closet previously?
No.
And so he changed it to a different doorknob? Okay. So Miss Paxton is in the freezer that is in the bedroom. Did you to this situation?
Did you ever walk in
or see Sean in the bedroom doing something?
Yes.
Tell us.
There was the first time I was taking a shower and I meant to put my dirty clothes in the hamper, and he was waiting and he held out. Confused as I looked over, and he had cut off her nose and intimate areas.
And what did you do when you walked in and saw that?
Stairs almost outside of the door, but he yelled at me to get back inside.
So when you walk in and see it, could you go into more detail? Where is he in relation to the freezer?
He was standing.
Yes. Is the freezer open or closed?
Open.
Could you describe, could you see inside from where you were? Could you describe what you observed from that point?
He had the garbage bag ripped open from her head to her edge.
You ran downstairs at that point, you said?
Yes.
And he yelled at you?
Yes.
What happened after that?
After I went upstairs, he closed the door and made me perform oral sex on him because it aroused him.
Could you repeat that last part?
Because it aroused him.
Because it aroused him, is that what you said? Sorry. Do need you to speak up, sorry. In the course of your relationship with him, and while this has happened and you're living in this situation, did anything change?
It just kept getting worse.
When you say it kept getting worse, what do you mean?
The power control, punishments, consequences, all of that.
Did you try to tell anyone about this?
Yes.
Who did you tell?
I told Mahogany, Pia, and I told my cousin Paula and one of my exes at the time, but I didn't have any luck.
When you told one of your exes at the time, how did you go about doing that? You've already said you didn't have a phone, so what did you do?
I went to a neighbor's house and borrowed her phone to text him.
Okay.
And I said, I need help.
And did you ever hear back from that?
No.
Okay. So, how many times did you tell Mahogany about these kinds of things?
At least 2 or 3 times.
Okay. Could you tell us about what led up to your eventually telling people what had happened?
She was noticing the bruises on my eyes, and she knew that something wasn't right. Because she kept asking me, Rebecca, what's wrong? What is he really doing to you?
Okay. So at that point, did you decide to do something?
Not at first, but later on.
So walk us through that.
One day she came over and showed me that he had been to prison for...
Stop. Walk us through your decision with Mahogany that you eventually decided to seek shelter.
Sure. All right, so they take a break there. The state wanted to cut off any discussion at all of his prior history, going to prison, et cetera, through that particular witness. So they took a break. We'll use the opportunity to take a quick break ourselves. When we come back, Rebecca Dishman continues her testimony on direct. So keep it here on Court TV, your front row seat to justice.
Court TV fans, you demanded it.
Here we go, do it.
So now you're getting more true crime at nighttime.
Oh my God, oh my God.
48 hours on Court TV. Tonight, 7, 6 Central on Court TV.
Tonight on Closing Arguments, a Tennessee man faces a potential death sentence in a twisted murder case. We'll bring you today's key moments as this high-stakes trial gets underway.
Closing Arguments, tonight at 8, 7 Central, only on Court TV.
All right, folks, we're continuing our coverage in the Kept Alive to Torture murder trial in Tennessee. The defendant's ex-girlfriend, Rebecca Dishman, remains on the stand. She's been testifying really in graphic detail about the murder of Jennifer Paxton, the victim in this case. So let's get you back to court now for more of Dishman's direct examination.
You had talked with Mahogany about getting a shelter placement, is that correct? Could you tell us about your interactions with getting a shelter?
Mahogany and I had talked a little bit about it, but I was too afraid at the time to do anything.
Was there a particular event that made you feel that way, or was it just, as you described earlier, it kept getting worse?
It was the fear and with it.
Jennifer?
No.
Why not?
And I would have a lot of trouble.
You told her, didn't you?
Yes. While I was doing laundry and asked me if I wanted to leave, and she helped me call an abuse shelter, and I called them what was going on with the house, the other case, like with Jennifer, but stuff, and so and she called the cops, and I was
at the shelter.
Yes.
Where are you when that conversation? You're on the phone with them to get the shelter? To go to Campbell County.
Mahogany.
You're at the house, shelter. It's through.
He helped me view shelter and helped me through and how to do things like that.
So did you just walk over to her house and leave?
She helped me pack, and I got in her car and we left.
So you drive up, you said Campbell County?
Yes.
And you pull over where you're going to meet a person from the shelter?
Yes.
Is that correct? What happens when you arrive there?
We waited for an hour or so and the lady never showed. So I broke down and told Mahogany the truth about Jennifer. And she told me that I would need to talk to the cops and be questioning things.
So did you stay there in Campbell County at that point?
We were told to go to Oak Ridge.
And so how do you get to Oak Ridge?
Mahogany follows, and I was in the police car.
When did you get in the police car?
As we were in Campbell County, talking.
So there in Campbell County, you get in a police car?
Yes.
Are you sure it wasn't in Anderson County when you got back with Mahogany?
It might have been like we got mixed up, and it was really confusing that day.
Had you ever been to Campbell County before?
No.
Okay. So you do get back from Campbell County?
Yes.
And you get in a cop car?
Yes.
To that. And where does the cop car take you?
To Oak Ridge Police Department.
And what happens when you arrive there?
I was brought in to questioning, and I told them everything I knew.
At that point, did you tell them that you participated?
All right, so Rebecca Dishman finally able to break free from what seemed to be a very awful situation and explain that she seemed to have some issues with what I would call executive functioning, which seems to make sense to me. All right, we'll take a break. When we come back, we'll hear more from Rebecca Dishman, so keep it here on Court TV, your front row seat to justice.
I'm Matt Johnson in Las Vegas, Nevada, covering the investigative reporter murder trial. This is Court TV, your front row seat to justice.
Welcome back to Court TV Live. I'm Michael Ayala. Testimony got underway today in Tennessee in the kept alive to torture murder trial of Sean Finnegan. He is accused of luring 36-year-old Jennifer Paxton to his home to beat, rape, and kill her. His then-girlfriend, Rebecca Dishman, was also charged in the case, but she took a plea deal to avoid a possible death sentence. She received life in prison without parole, and in exchange, she agreed to testify against Finnegan. Well, she's on the stand now, and she's on direct examination. She's talking about when the whole ordeal was over and she was in custody of police. Let's get back to that.
Did you use the phrase, "we killed her"?
Yes.
Okay. Now, there's something you've referenced earlier that you would ask a neighbor to use a phone. Is that accurate? When you used a phone, whose did you use?
Kelsey, our neighbor at the time.
Okay. Any other neighbors' phones that you would use for texting, chatting, anything?
Mahogany's.
Okay. May I approach?
As I said.
The first thing I'm going to show you, and this should be something that you have seen before.
Yes.
This is something that you've reviewed. Do you recognize that document?
Yes.
Are those cell phone messages?
Yes.
Are these cell phone messages from Mahogany's phone?
Yes.
And you looked through these, and if you could look for us right now and tell me if you recognize text messages that you sent versus text messages that Mahogany sent. Do those look like your conversations with Sean Finnegan?
Yes.
Okay. And that is the document you've previously looked at?
Yes.
Your Honor, please, I would like to just have this marked for identification at this point.
We'll do identification 1.
I'll write that to you. Also, a report that you have seen from Mahogany's cell phone. Do you recognize that?
Yes.
Is that indicative of, or that was from, Sean Finnegan's cell phone, is that correct?
Yes.
And in the course of your relationship with Mr. Finnegan, did he ever take photographs of you?
Yes.
And in those photographs, were there ever sexually explicit things?
Yes. Many times.
Okay. I am, again with this, going to mark this for identification that these are pictures that you have seen from his phone that he took of you.
Yes.
Have identification 2.
And these are, for identification, multiple, the photos that are in this report. Do you recognize this one?
Yes.
Identification 3. Is this report you?
Yes.
This picture. Identification 4. Do you recognize this photo?
Yes.
Is that identification 5? And this photo?
Yes.
Identification 6. This photo, is that you?
Yes.
Identification 7. Identification 8, is that you?
Yes.
You recognize that photo?
Yes.
And I believe this will be number 9. Do you recognize that photo?
Yes.
Is this you depicted? And this is the report.
Thanks, sir.
Some photos. And you indicated that you recognize each of those, is that correct?
Yes.
In those photos, there's one where it looks like they're, well, I was going to do these identifications. With your permission, please, witness Dishman.
That goes, let's see.
All right, when we come back, we'll have more testimony from Tennessee.
True Crime Obsession, 48 hours on Court TV. Coming up next on E.
Closing arguments, a Tennessee death sentence in a
Target 87.
All right, folks, before we head back to court, let's bring back in our guest. President of the West Coast Trial Lawyers, Nima Rahmani, is with us, and Deputy Chief of Investigations for Gwinnett County, Georgia, Curtis Clemens, is here in studio. Curtis, I'll start with you, and just want to get your general thoughts on Rebecca Dishman. I would call her the star witness for the state. She's the one providing all the information about this crime. Your thoughts on her?
She is the star witness, but she's a double-edged sword. She's the worst witness, but she's also the best witness for this case. We can't forget that she's integrally entwined in the death of this victim, Ms. Paxton here. And even though she's testifying for the state against the defendant in this case, you have to be very careful how you tread, because in our discussions, you know, during the break, this is a young lady that appears to have a very childlike presence. I don't know if it's through trauma or some other issues that she's had in her childhood and being taken advantage of, but when you have, and she mentioned it briefly, you know, she was in fear because of his control and his power, and he fully took advantage of that and controlled her completely, even to the point where she didn't call authorities, she didn't even save herself when he was gone to work. So this is a double-edged sword kind of witness.
Yeah, no doubt. It raises questions, Nima Rahmani, at the end of the day, but I'm willing to buy the fact that she was, in fact, a victim, but she is going to be spending the rest of her life in prison, and when I look at her, I know that there are some issues. She talked about, I think, she has issues with some of those executive function type things, seemed to be what she was saying. What would you do on cross-examination with a witness? We know that the defense is claiming she was kind of the one that was behind all this.
Well, of course, the defense has to go after her and has to point the finger at her. And if you're the prosecution, you have to be very careful with these type of cooperating co-defendant cases. They could potentially hang your jury. Obviously, we saw it in the Tao case. But you need it in a case like this because you know the defense's argument is that their client took a shower, and when they came back, his girlfriend had shot the victim. Now, obviously, I don't buy it. There's so much evidence in this case. There's admissions. There's, you know, hiding the body, dismembering the body, and really just shows the power of the death penalty here, Michael, because you have someone that pled guilty, accepted a life sentence plus 50 years, and really, I think that's your most powerful evidence if you're the prosecution. There's not someone who's necessarily lying to save herself because she took a life sentence in this case, despite herself being a victim of domestic violence. It's not like she's getting any discount. No matter what, she's going to spend the rest of her life in prison. This is why you should believe her, and this is why both of them were involved. I think the only hiccup here for the state is you can't let that criminal history come in. It's so powerful. It's so prejudicial. So you got to advise all your witnesses. And going back to that Tao case, I question why didn't the defense plead to that felon in possession? Get that off the table. You don't want your defendant to be dirtied up like that.
Yeah, no question about it. All right, Nima, thank you so much for that. Folks, I want to take you back to court now. Rebecca Dishman is still testifying. She's testifying now about some of the disturbing things that she says she endured at the hands of the defendant.
Could you describe what is depicted in these photos?
Sean carved his initial in my lower back with a kitchen knife.
And then he took photos?
Yes.
Okay.
They're just having trouble connecting you through the internet.
Let's just pass them. Okay, first one's first. Okay, pass that one first. Okay, next question.
The next one will be Collective 6 for ID. You previously said you recognize that photo. Who is in that photo?
That is me.
And what is depicted in this photo?
I was laying down and he ejaculated on me.
This is Collective 6, Exhibit ID 5 for ID. Do you recognize that picture?
Yes.
And what is depicted in that photo?
He had me defecate and then took pictures.
Okay. And Collective 8, Collective 6, ID 8. You recognize that? Who's depicted in this picture?
Yes, yes, ma'am.
And what is this scene?
He defecated on me and took pictures.
Collective 6, ID 7. What is this picture?
It's me. And he used the bathroom on me and took pictures.
Let's wait for a moment until I get all the pictures back, please. All right, next question.
Question probably on a lot of people's mind, Ms. Dishman, is why didn't you tell Mahogany about the murder or run to Dollar General near your house or anything?
At the time, I wasn't thinking rationally. Fear overtook everything.
If I could go back to when Miss Paxton was in the bedroom and you said that Mr. Finnegan was choking her.
Yes.
Could you describe specifically, is she face down, face up, on her side? How is she positioned when this is going on?
Face down.
And how is he positioned with her face down?
He was straddled over her.
Could you just...
And he was using on her neck.
So I'm going to describe records. And you pulled upward.
Yes.
Okay. Did you, Paxton?
No.
Did you choke her?
No.
Did you strangle her?
No.
Did you slice her?
No.
Did you hit her with a bat?
No.
I pass this witness, Judge.
All right, that's it for our coverage tonight in the Kept Alive to Torture murder trial.